Please excuse any mispronunciations by TTS. The English TTS has trouble with non-English words. But, if you watch Zentraya, you should be fine. As a result of YouTube's rules pertaining to links in descriptions, I will be adding site details to the video. Article by Rolling Stone, credit to Michelle Thompson, for the illustrations, used in original article. The 250 Greatest Guitarists of All Time. Celebrating six-string glory in blues, rock, metal, punk, folk, country, reggae, jazz, flamenco, bossa nova, and much more. My guitar is not a thing, Joan Jett once said. It is an extension of myself. It is who I am. The guitar is the most universal instrument, the most primal, and the most expressive. Anybody can pick up a little guitar in no time at all, but you can spend a lifetime exploring its possibilities. That's why thinking about what makes a great guitarist is so much fun. Rolling Stone published its original list of the 100 greatest guitarists in 2011. It was compiled by a panel of musicians, mostly older classic rockers. Our new expanded list was made by the editors and writers of Rolling Stone. This one goes to 250. Guitar players are often as iconic as the lead singers for the bands they play in. But mythic guitar gods like Jimmy Page, Brian May, and Eddie Van Halen are only one part of the story. We wanted to show the scope of the guitar's evolution. The earliest entrant on the list, folk music icon Elizabeth Cotten, was born in 1893, the youngest, indie rock prodigy Lindsey Jordan, was born in 1999. The list has rock, jazz, reggae, country, folk, blues, punk, metal, disco, funk, bossa nova, bachata, Congolese rumba, flamenco, and much more. There are peerless virtuosos like Pat Metheny, Yvette Young, and Steve Vai, as well as primitivists like Johnny Ramone, and Poison Ivy of the Cramps. There are huge stars like Prince, Joni Mitchell, and Neil Young, and behind-the-scenes masters like Memphis Soul great Teenie Hodges and smooth rock assassin Larry Carlton. Many great guitarists realized their genius as part of a duo, so Kim and Kelly Deal of the Breeders, Adrian Smith, and Dave Murray of Iron Maiden, and other symbiotic pairs share an entry. Our only instrumental criteria is that you had to be a six-string player. In making the list, we tended to value heaviness over tastiness, feel over polish, invention over refinement, risk-takers and originators more than technicians. We also tended to give an edge to artists who channeled whatever gifts God gave them into great songs and game-changing albums, not just impressive playing. As modern blues visionary Gary Clark Jr. put it, I don't know if I want to get too far off the path, I don't want to get lost in the forest, but I like to wander out a bit and adventure. 250 Andy Summers. The Police were a new kind of power trio, and Andy Summers was the main reason. Quickly moving away from punk, he recast jazz chords, and reggae rhythms as headlong rock and roll. Summers played as sparely as possible, constructing clip twitches or dubby washes of sound, leaving ample room for Sting and Stuart Copeland. His tone and style were just absolutely perfect, he left space around everything, Rush's Alex Lifeson said. And he can handle anything from beautiful acoustic playing to jazz to hybrid kinds of stuff. Key tracks Message in a Bottle, Every Breath You Take.
249 Brittany Howard. Since starting out in the garage roots band Alabama Shakes, Brittany Howard's guitar playing has always been an earthy, fluid, admirably ad hoc, complement to her powerhouse vocals, and soulful songwriter. She has an elastic sense of rhythm. Check out the way her tough, jagged lines bounce off Shakes lead guitarist Heath Fogg on their 2015 song Don't Wanna Fight. Howard took on straight-ahead rock and roll with her side band Thunderbitch, and her 2019 solo album, Jamie, was a stellar showcase for her open-ended musicianship, from the funky James Brown-indebted hopscotching she did on History Repeats to the molten fuzz she slathered on Presence. Key tracks, History Repeats, Presence. 248 Robbie Krieger. Schooled in flamenco and jazz, Robbie Krieger pushed beyond rock at a time when most players were still bound to the blues. In The Doors, he had the improvisatory flair to follow Jim Morrison's wildest journeys, wrote some of their biggest hits Light My Fire, and picked up the slack in their keyboard, drums, guitar lineup. Not having a bass player made me play more bass notes to fill out the bottom, he said. Not having a rhythm player also made me play differently, to fill out the sound. I always felt like three players simultaneously. Key tracks: Riders on the Storm, Roadhouse Blues. 247 Ricky Wilson. When the B-52s played live, Ricky Wilson often seemed to exist happily in the background amidst the manic exuberance of lead singer Fred Schneider, and the beehive hair and campy dance moves of Kate Pearson and Cindy Wilson. But his mix of down-home chicken scratch, angular post-punk, rockabilly, and surf rock on classics like 52 Girls, Strobe Light, and Private Idaho made him one of the most inventive players of the new wave era. Wilson often used only 4 or 5 strings on his Blue Miss Right guitar, and odd tunings to get a strange, Spartan sound. I just tune the strings till I hear something I like, he once said. With his death in 1985, the indie rock scene lost an unassuming radical. Key tracks: 52 Girls, Mesopotamia. 246 Paul Simon. The great wordsmith speaks as vividly through his guitar as his lyrics. Weaned on early doo-wop and rock and roll, Simon got caught up in the folk revival during the mid-60s, traveling to England to study the acoustic mastery of Bert Jansch. He has continued absorbing new influences, as on Dazzling Blue, off his most recent album, So Beautiful or So What. All that folk finger-picking is what I did with Simon and Garfunkel, but here it's on top of this rhythm with Indian musicians playing in 12/8ths. In his 80s, he's still as nimble as ever, as he demonstrated on his 2023 album 7 Psalms. Key tracks: Dazzling Blue, Kathy's Song.
245 Leslie West, real name, Leslie Weinstein, first made his mark in mid-60s garage rock, with the Vagrants' meaty cover of Otis Redding's Respect. By 1969, West was the heavy vengeance in the Cream-like quartet Mountain. On songs like the 1970 hit Mississippi Queen, West played roughened blues lines with deceiving facility, and an R&B flair, through a black forest of stressed amp distortion. The riffs were incredible, says Dave Davies. He could play flashy, intricate phrases. But he wasn't a look-at-me guy. He played with feel. Key tracks: Mississippi Queen, Nantucket Sleigh Read, To Owen Coffin. 244 Idilio Paredes. Now that pop stars Rosalia and The Weeknd have dipped into its mystique for a global hit, it's hard to believe that bachata was once little known outside its native Dominican Republic. And the man who gave la musique Adele Amargue its sonic identity, those pungent, spiraling guitar lines that flutter and accentuate the bitterness of love lost, is Idilio Paredes. A self-taught prodigy, he played a key role in engineering the transition from bolero campesino to the contemporary bachata, that finally won its rightful place as a transcendent Afro-Caribbean genre in the 90s. Paredes' discography as a prolific session man from the 60s to the 80s speaks for itself, but El Maestro was also vindicated through his appearance on the exquisite 2011 album The Bachata Legends. Key tracks: No Me Alvites, Bendita Nina. 243 Aaron Dessner and Bryce Dessner. The National are a one-of-a-kind rock story, starring a virtuosic twin guitar duo who happen to be twin brothers. Bryce Dessner has collaborated with legends like Steve Reich, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Johnny Greenwood, and Cronus Quartet. Aaron Dessner is Taylor Swift's guitar wingman on Folklore and Evermore, adding Jerry Garcia-like twang to Cowboy Like Me. He really cuts loose on August in the Long Pond studio sessions. The Dessner brothers can mesh for Electric Angst Terrible Love, or intimate folk beauty I Need My Girl. They also masterminded the Ace 2016 Grateful Dead tribute Day of the Dead, jamming with Bob Weir on I Know You Rider. Key tracks: Mr. November, Blood Buzz Ohio, The System Only Dreams in Total Darkness. 242 Lindsey Jordan. Gen Z guitar hero Lindsey Jordan took lessons from fellow 250 Greatest Guitarists list member Mary Timony, the extraordinarily inventive guitarist in Helium and Wild Flag. When Jordan made her debut as Snail Mail at 18 years old with 2018's Lush, she seemed to have arrived having fully internalized the entire indie rock canon. She's a casual virtuoso, and a serious shredder, shifting from strummy tension builds to glorious, combustible solos, from coolly coiled Liz Phair lo-fi to sonic youth sprawl. I like to play really balls out, she told Rolling Stone in 2018. That's what it means to be on stage with integrity. Key tracks: Heat Wave, Pristine. 241 Keith Urban. He may not be country's most virtuoso player, or its most traditional, but Keith Urban shines among Nashville cats for his effortless style. His riffs, rhythms, and solos seem to materialize as naturally as thinking, and yet somehow always elevate the song. Nothing is overtly flashy, every note makes sense. Both are peak Urban in the studio. But he's at his best when on stage, delivering guitar heroics that stack up with the greatest of the rock pantheon. No wonder he's jammed with everyone from the Rolling Stones to Nile Rodgers. I love that people want to hear the guitar, Urban told Rolling Stone in 2015, but I just think about the song, whatever the song seems to want. Key tracks: Highway Don't Care, Blue Ain't Your Color. 240 Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith of Riot Girl Pioneers, Brat Mobile got her start playing along to records by Beat Happening, a self-consciously primitive cuddlecore band with a woman on drums. That was in '87, and not only did I see women could play music, but I could see that just you could do it yourself, she told the Museum of Pop Culture. I could never be Duran Duran's Andy Taylor. And I realized that was okay. The style she went on to create with singer Alison Wolfe and drummer Molly Newman combined melodic surf rock bass lines with slashing garage rock chords to help make the Brat Mobile's 1993 debut, Potty Mouth, one of the most exciting punk records of the 90s. Key tracks: Love Thing, PRDCT. 239 Dwayne Eddy. If there was any doubt left in the late 1950s that the guitar, not the saxophone, was rock and roll's essential lead instrument, Dwayne Eddy settled the argument. See his 1958 single Rebel Rouser, curled with country twang, and rippling with tremolo. Chet Atkins used vibrato in a selective way, Dwayne Eddy used it to thrash the music, says the Kinks' Dave Davies. The impact of Eddy's hits, like 40 Miles of Bad Road, and Peter Gunn, would soon be heard in surf music, and guitarists such as Jeff Beck, and George Harrison. Key tracks: Rebel Rouser, Peter Gunn.
238 Doug Gillard. If Robert Pollard is the off-kilter genius ID of Ohio indie rock institution guided by voices, then Doug Gillard is the band's beating heart. He's a perfect complement to Pollard, turning his mad wordplay and experimental drones into rock and roll, and doing it at the tireless pace of 2, or even 3 GBV albums a year. I know his usual shapes and drones, or can pretty much decipher what they are if it's a new shape, and replicate them on the rhythm parts on the records for the most part, Gillard once said. But also, I have some freedom to transform them. Key tracks: I Am a Tree, Mr. Child. 237 Jennifer Batten. Came to prominence as the lion-maned guitar hurricane on Michael Jackson's biggest tours. It's a gig that required her to play funk, soul, metal, and Eddie Van Halen's Beat It solo every night. On her first solo album, 1992's Above, Below and Beyond, she recorded Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee, Jackson's Wannabe Startin' Somethin', and John Coltrane's Giant Steps, 2 unusual ways on electric guitar with whammy dives, and finger tapping galore throughout, all with her unique touch. She later took giant steps herself, becoming one of the few guitarists capable of going toe-to-toe with Jeff Beck, touring and recording with him on some of his most daring albums around the turn of the millennium. Key tracks: Flight of the Bumblebee, Giant Steps, rock version. 236 Greg Sage formed his Portland, Oregon, band The Wipers in 1977, blowing past punk orthodoxies before they even existed with his complex, sprawling songs and jagged, MIA's Michael Lee distorted guitar sound. At a time when other bands valued thrashing simplicity, Wipers' songs such as When It's Over and Romeo felt like pummeling soundscapes. As a result, they galvanized the Pacific Northwestern indie rock scene. We learned everything from the Wipers, said Kurt Cobain, who proudly claimed them as his favorite band. They were playing a mix of punk and hard rock when nobody cared. Key tracks: When It's Over, Up Front. 235 Laura Marling. British singer-songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Laura Marling is a subtler kind of virtuoso, employing complex tunings, and voicings within her music that sound far simpler than they really are. I Was an Eagle, off Marling's 2013 LP, One I Was an Eagle, sounds dreamy and atmospheric thanks to her use of data tuning, with her primary influence Joni Mitchell ringing through her catalog via unusual phrasings, and atonal flourishes. During the COVID-19 lockdown, Marling shared her guitar insight with fans and followers, offering concise and informative tutorials on Instagram. Key tracks: I Was an Eagle, Wildfire, Ghosts. 234, John McGeoch. Manchester's John McGeoch announced his presence with the Vaulting Attack of Magazine's 1978 debut single, Shot by Both Sides, one of UK punk rock's great anthems, and he quickly went on to invent his own expansive, architectural style on Magazine's later work, and with Public Image Ltd., as well as with Susie and the Banshees. McGeoch earned worshipful praise from Johnny Marr, Radiohead's Ed O'Brien, and others. His mix of slashing rhythm guitar, miasmic flange, and swirling arpeggios made the Banshees' 1981 album, Juju, the great 80s goth guitar album, introducing a moody new language to UK rock where atmosphere mattered much more than angst. Key tracks: Philadelphia, Spellbound. 233 Her has stayed low-key enough that she still gets to blow minds with each big public appearance like the Grammys, or the Super Bowl. Her's voice is steeped in classic R&B, and she loves a simmering ballad, but her playing runs the gamut from delicate and fluid accents to Prince-like rock shredding. Her's single Hold On features her doubling her own vocal melodies with a series of squealing leads, one of her favorite signatures. I also like to play my guitar like I'm singing, she told Guitar World. Sometimes, I like to sing and play my solos at the same time, even harmonizing my voice with my guitar. In 2021, Fender created a signature Stratocaster model for her, making her the first black woman to receive the honor. Key tracks: Hold On, Comfortable. 232 David Williams. Though he grew up loving jazz, David Williams made his greatest impact on a style of music not known as an instrumentalist's showcase, 80s pop. His intentionally spare touches are key to the rhythmic seduction of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, Stevie Nicks' Stand Back, and Diana Ross Muscles. The Vietnam veteran, who also toured with Jackson and Madonna and worked with everyone from Chaka Khan to Kenny Loggins, once described the secret spice he added to top 40 hits: "You don't need much of it, but the right amount gets the job done." Williams died of a heart attack in 2009 at 58. Key tracks: Billie Jean, Dirty Diana. 231 Etta Baker. Etta Baker's name is synonymous with Piedmont blues, a rolling, ragtime, and folk-influenced style of playing that originated along the East Coast in the early part of the 20th century. Baker, born to a multiracial family in North Carolina in 1913 and raised in Virginia, learned guitar from her father and often played dances with her family as a youngster. Her instrumental compositions like One Dime Blues, that appeared on a 1956 anthology, were seismic. Among those listening were Bob Dylan and Taj Mahal, the latter of whom would record an album with Baker before her 2006 death. Key tracks: One Dime Blues, Carolina Breakdown. 230 Gustavo Cerati. Maybe because he single-handedly transformed the sound of Latin rock with the majesty of his songs, it is easy to forget what an extraordinary guitar player Gustavo Cerati was. In the mid-80s, the Argentine singer-songwriter unleashed a Pan-American rock en español boom with trio Soda Stereo and anthemic hits like De Musica Libre. After disbanding Soda, Cerati fell under the spell of sequencers and samples, but he returned to guitar god mode with 2006's Ahi Vamos, a blustery session soaked in ragged electric riffs. Cerati fell into a coma at age 50 and never recovered, but the image of him smiling with pleasure as he ripped into a solo on stage is forever etched in the subconscious of Latin music culture. Key tracks: Canción Animal, La Exception. 229 Barbara Lynn. 16-year-old Barbara Lynn had a final warning for her boyfriend, Stank: "If you should lose me, you'll lose a good thing." The Beaufort, Texas native set her words to music, using a right-handed guitar she'd taught herself to play with her left hand. The resulting song, "You'll Lose a Good Thing," an R&B #1 in 1962, was the first lick in an acclaimed 60 years and strumming career. Lynn's mostly self-penned tunes have been covered by the Rolling Stones, Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, and Robert Plant, and sampled by the Beastie Boys and Moby. This speaks to the relatability and creative power of a good woman done wrong. Key tracks: "You'll Lose a Good Thing," "I'll Suffer."
228 Steve Jones. When New York Dolls turned Sex Pistols manager Malcolm McLaren gave Steve Jones a white Les Paul Custom that had been played by the Dolls, Sylvain, the instrument, or a similar model, became Jones' weapon of choice ever after. Jones' brutish power chords and flamboyant gutter glam solos were a perfect mirror for the taunting bile of Johnny Rotten, and a yardstick for every punk rock noisemaker who followed. His legacy was set with indelible riffs on one record, 1977's Never Mind the Bollocks, that inspired guitarists from Slash to Billy Joe Armstrong. It was an attitude as much as a sound. As Jones told a journalist during his days with the Sex Pistols, "Actually, we're not into music. We're into chaos." Key tracks: "God Save the Queen," "Pretty Vacant." 227 Glenn Branca. A pillar of New York's post-punk new wave movement, Glenn Branca committed himself to establishing the guitar, often tuned to his trademark harmonic series, and modified to function in different registers, and produce varied tonalities, as a symphonic instrument that could be composed for ensembles, sometimes totaling up to 100 players. His droning, heaving Symphony No. 1, recorded in 1981, would feature both Thurston Moore and Lee Ranaldo of Sonic Youth in the orchestra. Branca would also release Sonic Youth's first album on his Neutral label, demonstrating that he also had a talent for spotting other musical revolutionaries. "I've got so many ideas about music that I haven't even begun to work on," he told Esquire in 2016. "If I lived to 200, I wouldn't finish my work." Key tracks: Lightfield, In Consonance, Velvets, and Pearls. 226 L. Kempner. Long before L. Kempner launched Palehound, an indie powerhouse project that recently opened for Boy Genius, they were just a 7-year-old child learning to play by strumming their dad's guitar with a marker cap. Since then, guitar has been the Boston native's guiding light. Electrifying riffs elevated by Kempner's musical dexterity carry vivacious tracks like The Clutch off their recent 4th studio album, Eye on the Bat. But what heightens the 29-year-old's refined skills is their versatility. Kempner is equally at home rocking out on their beloved Stratocaster, doing pretty acoustic finger-picking, or swirling arpeggios. Key tracks: The Clutch, Independence Day. 225 Fred, Sonic, Smith, and Wayne Kramer. Forged in Detroit during the 1960s, the MC5 guitar tandem of Wayne Kramer and Fred, Sonic, Smith worked together like the pistons of a powerful engine. Combining Chuck Berry and early Motown influences with a budding interest in free jazz, the pair could kick their band's legendarily high-energy jams deep into space while simultaneously keeping one foot in the groove. If you play with another guitar player long enough, you exhaust everything you know, and then you start playing what you don't know, and you get into something good, Kramer told Premier Guitar in 2018. "We just found that we could play syncopated rhythm parts simultaneously, and they would lock in perfectly, or we could solo simultaneously, and they'd still lock in." Key tracks: Looking at You, Poison. 224 Marv Tarplin. The playing and composing of Atlanta-born and Detroit-raised Marv Tarplin became key to the success of Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, almost as soon as the soul crooner handpicked him to be the group's guitarist in the 1960s. Tarplin's versatility fit the demands of Motown, from his driving chords on Going to a Go-Go, to the sweet 12-string acoustic on You Really Got a Hold on Me. His playing around with the chords of Harry Belafonte's Day-O, the Banana Boat song, led to him writing the core of the Miracles' smash, The Tracks of My Tears. He continued to work with Robinson after the Miracles split. The delicate filigrees he added to Robinson's 1979 solo single Cruisin' gave that track a timeless feeling that helped propel it to the Billboard Hot 100's top 5. Key tracks: The Tracks of My Tears, Cruisin'.
223 Joseph Spence. In 1958, musicologists Sam Charters and Ann Danberg Charters were traveling in the Bahamas looking for musicians to record when they came across Joseph Spence, playing music so rich they assumed from a distance that they were listening to two guitarists. He often seemed to be improvising in the bass, the middle strings, and the treble at the same time, Sam noted in the liner notes to Joseph Spence, The Complete Folkways Recordings 1958. Spence's pointillistic, sharp-angled finger-picking on a wide range of music, from blues to spirituals, to calypso, would have a huge influence on the folk movement, and beyond. The Grateful Dead turned the Spence highlight, We Bid You Good Night, into a live set Closer, and the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds classic, Sloop John B., is indebted to Spence's version of the song. Key tracks Brownskin Girl, Jump in the Line 222 Molly Tuttle. Even before they started sweeping awards ceremonies, California-raised, Nashville-based bluegrass innovator Molly Tuttle, and her crack band Golden Highway, were writing their name into the history of roots music. Her acoustic flat picking, influenced by everyone from Tony Rice, to Joni Mitchell, to Clarence White, is rooted in but not bound by tradition. Earlier this year, she became the first bluegrass act to ever score a Best New Artist Grammy nomination, a sign of the sound's continuing evolution, which Tuttle has played a large part in. Our generation of bluegrass players are really pushing in some new directions, Tuttle told Rolling Stone in January. I feel lucky to be part of this scene that's breaking down barriers. Key tracks Take the Journey, El Dorado 221 James Blood Ulmer. First playing soul jazz, then as the be-like foil to free jazz icon Ornette Coleman's melodic runs, James Blood Ulmer smashed together generations of blues, funk, and jazz guitar into glistening sheets, skronky riffs, and jittery solos. On albums such as Tales of Captain Black and Odyssey, his stinging tone proved a massive influence on the 70s and 80s downtown New York experimental scene, touching everyone from Vernon Reid, who produced Ulmer's excellent 2000s blues records, to no-wave bands like DNA and Mars. As Reid himself put it, James Blood Ulmer is fully aware, theoretically, and idiomatically, he's just never been constrained by those concerns. He is a rock. He is unapologetically himself. He is the blues itself, not its rules. Key tracks Theme from Captain Black, Timeless 220 Courtney Barnett. Indie rock singer-songwriter, Courtney Barnett's ability to shift between intricate, melodic finger-picking, to frenetic, garage rock-inspired solos, makes her witty storytelling all the more dynamic. It sounds like you're driving across a highway, and it's sunny, Barnett said to Rolling Stone in 2021 about, write a list of things to look forward to, from her 2021 album, Things Take Time, Take Time. That's an accurate encapsulation of the way Barnett's guitar playing accompanies the lilting, liberating songs she writes. On Lotta C. Lice, her 2017 collaboration album with Kurt Weill, who is also on this list, the chemistry between the two musicians is dazzling, as their guitars and vocals intertwine spontaneously and seamlessly. Key tracks Turning Green, Over Everything, Pedestrian at Best 219 Glenn Tipton, and KK Downing. After seeing what Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple could do with a single guitarist, Judas Priest redefined heavy in the mid-70s with two, KK Downing and Glenn Tipton. Rather than split themselves into rhythm and lead guitar duties, like the Rolling Stones and the Kinks had done, Tipton and Downing doubled up the riffs, took turns with cutting solos, and embraced harmony leads on the band's motorcycle revving songs. Their mutual give and take set the template for Iron Maiden, Metallica, Slayer, and all the great two-guitar bands that followed. As Slayer's Kerry King has said, you can almost always tell that if it's Tipton, it's super fucking tasty. If it's KK, it's a more edgy, almost punky kind of vibe, which is a great mix. Key tracks Victim of Changes, Breaking the Law, The Hellion, Electric Eye 218 LZZY Hale. For her dynamo voice alone, LZZY Hale is a goddess of hard rock. But she's also a fierce player, with an aggressively rhythmic slap style, that complements Hailstorm's lead guitarist, Joe Hottinger. Hale can shred too, check out the way she mimics the vocal melody of I Miss the Misery, on her instrument, and is so influential to 21st century guitar rock, that Gibson chose her as its first female brand ambassador. The company even designed a Hale signature model of its Explorer, which she plays on stage, and gifts to her peers, from Demi Lovato to Daniela Villarreal of The Warning. The people at Gibson keep telling me the demographic that buys the most electric guitars right now are female, Hale told Rolling Stone. The wave is coming whether anybody likes it or not. Key tracks. I Miss the Misery, The Steeple 217 Thomas McClary. As one of the first black students to integrate Florida public schools, Eustis, Florida-born Thomas McClary, whose first instrument was the ukulele, had experience creating his own path. He went to college at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, where he formed the Commodores, with singer Lionel Richie. The group merged funk, soul, gospel, and country in a way that appealed to black and white listeners, and McClary's mix of glam grandeur and blues grit on such songs as Easy helped shape the sound of 80s crossover. I would listen to Santana, Jimi Hendrix, Albert King, James Taylor, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, he later recalled. I thought it would be really great to mesh those guys together, to have a really raunchy, raw, authentic sound that could be appealing to everybody. Key tracks: Easy, Brick House.